Today, is it Karen Bass for the catch on the VP pick? A lot more coming right up. Hi, everyone. Welcome to this segment of Black Spring with Autumn. Hope you guys are doing well on your Monday. Hope you had a great weekend. And of course, we are not short on election buzz, culture, and of course, flip-flopping on the left. So thank you guys so much for coming in. If you're joining me either passing by or if you're considering coming by, thank you so much for that. And shout out to the loyal patrons and you, the subscribers. Shout out to Derek C. Williams, Killer Whale Channels, The Definition of Anarchy, Angel's Army, the former Angel Munez Variety Show. Shout out to Little Miss Goth, Gary L. Youngkeast Jr., who I think has a new moniker today. Looks like it's Let the Truth Be Told. Shout out to Chrysler Imperial H, as well as a special shout out to Cold War Jesus. And thank you guys so much for those of you that are just now coming in. If you will take that extra care on those thumbs up, thumbs down, and if you can, throw a little caution to the wind on the share option. And if all else fails, if you will just be sure that you're still subscribed to the channel during these technocratic, challenging times. So once again, I hope everybody's doing well. Shout out to Let the Truth Be Told and Unique View. Thank you so much for coming in. I really appreciate it. And we do have quite a bit to get into. We've got quite a few things. As I mentioned a bit on the lineup, we're going to talk a little bit about the VP picks. We're going to look a little bit closer at some profiles. I don't mind doing that. I think we'll do two profiles because I'm not exactly sure if the media has the drop, if you will, the drop on the actual, on who that actual short list is, but we will definitely explore. We will explore two, and we will take a closer look. We'll look at some specific things, around here. I like to take a look at candidates' profiles and are they voting in alignment with their oath of office, which that would be the Constitution. And, and during these times, that's really what matters. It's either this place is going to resemble Europe 2000 or 2018 or 2016, or it's going to resemble at least what it is right now as America, and not some regressive or something that you may not even be familiar with. In fact, at times many people have compared it to thinking that we're starting to look more like Germany. We're just Nazi Germany, short of a couple of train cars, I guess, minus that. So thank you guys so much for joining me on this segment of Black Spring with Autumn. Shout out to Let the Truth Be Told. Yes, it's a little nostalgic, but it's fun. It's fun. Let the truth be told. Shout out to Chrysler Imperial H. Good morning to you. Hope you're doing well. So shout out to everybody in the stream. I really appreciate it. Nice to see you guys around here. So what we're going to do is we will take a look a bit first. We're going to look at Karen Bass, and then we're going to do on this morning, we're going to do Karen Bass. And I think the next time we'll pick up another candidate, but their profiles, I think, the profiles can be a little thick So I won't do more than one profile per segment. That's what I won't do. It's a little bit it's too thick to do more than one. But if we were just whizzing through those, I could do an entire segment on profiles. But we'll just do one. And but we'll go ahead. We're going to start with Karen Bass. I'm just going to give you a little bit of foreground background. Karen Bass's name has come up on many occasions. I mean, I think she's been to the state of California. I think maybe she was a bit of at one time, she was a budding, I guess, kind of a rock star, if you will. But she's always been, she's the chairwoman, she's the current chairwoman of the Black Caucus, the Congressional Black Caucus, which I'm going to try not to get into too much about that group of individuals, but I will give you some information that I have, some specifics. Now, as I said, she is Karen Bass is currently serving as she's representing the 37th Congressional District of California. And so there's some specific things. You've got a lot of people from California serving on these financial committees, the House committees. For one, she's on the House Committee on Foreign Affairs. And I've mentioned before about the amount of foreign entanglements, and that would be, we'll get into that later, because she's also subcommitted. It seems like the Black Caucus overall have adopted, they do more work. They do more, and they spend more time on foreign entanglements than they do in their own communities. As for instance, Maxine Waters, she's Congressional Black Caucus. She's also on one of these House financial committees. Well, what does her district look like? What does she do for her district? I mean, we're not on Maxine Waters, but the parallel here is that everybody that most of the representation that I'm seeing, they spend more of their time on global agendas and global sustainability than they do in stabilizing their very own districts. So I'm just saying, I just think that the American people need to get a better grasp. We're reaching for the top. We're reaching for representation at the top, but we're not managing the power that we have on the bottom, because your most accessible power is where most of your power is. Your county seat, that's your county seat, your city councils, all of these, your local, your school boards. You have a greater influence there in those local areas, because those are the areas that are closest to you. And when we go to these general elections and we go on the federal level, those are more remote government representatives. And on the left, in their mind, and maybe even some rhinos and all other sorts of politicians, they tend to want, in these times, they want to centralize and nationalize things. They want to rule. They want to govern over the U.S. and it appears to be they've moved far left, and they want to top down rule and be more government, more government, more government, more government, more government, more government, more government. So I said all of that to say, to wrap us, I'll get back to, I don't want to get too far away from Karen Bass, but I'm saying that these politicians have got their tentacles so far into these global organizations, and they've even created acts on trade, even making deals on trade and pretending that they're trying to help Africa with their sustainability. And I'm just saying, if you're not assisting your constituents, deal with your constituents first. But then I just don't know where they have the permission. The amount of foreign entanglements that we have those are not constitutional. They're not. And that's where the entanglements are. But it turns out, they create all of these fronts for foreign aid, and then they end up boomeranging that money back into their own pockets, is what the trend seems to be. So without further ado, I'll give you a little bit more on that. Also, when it comes to Bass, just going back into, she did have a bit of a medical career or medical training prior to her venture into politics. And then that also kind of segues me into, she also is a bigger champion. She's a champion for reproductive rights, aka abortion, aka euphemizing abortion, making death respectable via abortion. That seems to be, and I'm not even on Kamala. Kamala had the same pieces, just a different, the whole assortment on the left, they have the same goals and the same interest, and most of it is it's demoralizing, it's destabilizing the Black community. So I don't know, for people that are not really paying attention, they're going to go out and vote, and still go out and vote for somebody just based on their background, their skin color. They're not looking at this woman's background. They're not looking at her profile. Many people are. I can't speak for everyone, but I can say that many people are not looking into these people's backgrounds. I mean, and I'm not going to get a whole lot into the weeds on abortion, because that's not this show, nor is it the topic of today. But many people have a horrible justification, or they don't have a good argument when they say, oh, they talk about abortion. Well, white women used to do it, and Black women had to go and do it in a dark alley. Yes, those are the kinds of responses that you get. I just think it's just low morale, and it's just, for the way that white people can be demonized. It's like, okay, the same person that you want to demonize, you also want them to love you and give you blessings to do even the worst things that you could do as a human being. I mean, I'm a bit confused. Why not do the right thing, or do something because it's the right thing? Why do the wrong thing and then say, oh, well, I should be able to do it because they got to do it? I mean, like I said, it's very low morale. It's very low. It's very immature. Where did you get stuck in your development that you think that you should be able to do something wrong, or something that's going to cost somebody else their life because somebody of another background did it? It's like I think a lot of people struggle with this whole black and white thing at this point, at this stage in life in 2020, is because in some part of their mind, they actually do think, I think there's some people that actually do believe that one race is superior to another. If you believe a white person is better than you, then that might drive your fury all the time. Oh, well, because they're actually superior to me and they got to do it, so that's why I should be able to do it. That's pretty low bar standard, right? Whether it's morality, or it's a pretty low standard if you can make it okay. You can justify doing wrong because somebody that you actually believe is superior to you did it. But I'm saying those are the kinds of responses that I've heard. If you ever go into that realm, if you ever run into a liberal, it doesn't even really, and I'm speaking from an exchange or a conversation. I've had that conversation with a man, and he goes into the same same shtick about why somebody should be able to do an abortion. I'm just thinking, That's just way pretty bad. Even for a man, that's the logic in that is a bit, I don't follow. I don't follow that. But enough about that. I don't mean to go into too many details, but that's my experience, and I've seen it more than once. And it's different. It's depending on who you talk to and how they and what their own background is. So shout out to everybody in the stream. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. Chrysler says, in my opinion, is there going to bring in a ringer by the name of, I really don't know. I have no idea. Shout out to Touchdown Sean. Thank you so much. I would hope that, people are just still, no, you haven't, Loch Ness Monster. I would hope, I would hope that Hillary is more than done at this point. I don't know. She is an agitator, a rebel rouser, and I think she and Obama are always at work. If you ask me, they're always in the background at work. You think his presidency is over? I can't tell, because this latest shenanigans. To me, it just proves all these false narratives and all these false narratives. Like that's what I'm talking about. The martyrdom that I talked about, and the communism and the campaigns and the way they train people to continue things is, he gets up there, you take Black people pre-civil rights. They had genuine grievances and real concerns. And then somebody comes along, or multiple people come along, or either they partner with a group of people with communist ideology and trains them to basically end up serving their agenda. It's not, I mean, I have some issues with the forward on some of the civil rights issues. I really do, because right now, everybody's flying under the banner of civil rights. In fact, you can barely, to me, you don't really I rarely recognize that is I barely recognize the distinction between what they were fighting for then and what's going on right now. It's too different. It's already morphed into something else, and that's what tends to happen. That's what tends to happen when you're dealing with either a communist inspired movement or revolution. Because right now, the way they're ripping down things and tearing things up right now, history is going to be told. This time period that we're living in right now is going to be told in a couple of different ways. So that also brings me to just a question really quickly. I'm going to get back to Karen Bass. I'm sorry, I'm going off on a bit of a tangent there, but so this is also a little bit, I want to kind of weave in and out of this a bit. We the people, are we the historians? Is it going to be up to you to maintain any values or any real or non-revisionist history? Are you looking around in your house to see, or are you going out to buy the last bottle of Aunt Jemima syrup, or are you going to snap all the photos not photos, but pictures and relics of the past before somebody tears them down? We have some commentary from Glenn Beck that I want to share with you in just a little bit. Shout out to Touchdown Sean. Yes, I can see that. It was a very different time, Sean. It was. It was a totally different time, and to me, it's so different than that right now. I just think that there was a lot of Decepticon, if you will, that we've been dealing with, and the 60s was the birthplace of a lot of con. So I'm going to move on from that. But I was talking, I'm going to go back into the VP segment. So here again, I'm just going to give you a little bit. This actually comes from her website on the, her website on .gov. It's a .gov site. And it talks about Chairwoman Bass she's acted to build coalitions and support economic growth and partnerships with the African continent with a goal to transform how the United States engages with African nations and to promote many opportunities to expand trade and economic growth between America and African nations. So don't get me wrong, I understand, Congress has they have quite a few powers, but some of these powers they exploit, and they don't actually have those powers. I mean, to me, I have an issue right now with them transferring power from our Congress to a appointed committee somewhere in the name of trade. So there you go. I'm just giving you a little bit of some background on Bass, because I thought this VP pick was going to come out this weekend, before the weekend was out, but not. I do believe maybe it's going to go another week. So with that said, I'm going to take you to a clip. Once again, I'd like to thank everybody for joining me on this segment of Black Spring with Autumn. Touchdown Sean says, I just saw where someone suggested to stop teaching history in the classroom. Well, I tell you what, Touchdown Sean, it's certainly becoming a landmine of, like, it's getting really sticky when the New York Times wants to be your revisionist. And, it's just, who's educating the kids? And to me, I think the person's name is Nicole something. So an SJW wants to teach your kids, by the way. She wants to teach your kids. And I guess Oprah is going to be purportedly going to be maybe a financier for her. So I'm going to take you to a clip. Thank you guys so much for tuning in to this segment of Black Spring. And so, I'm going to go ahead and bring you to the clip here. So you got a bit of campaigning here from another Democrat. Yeah, I'm telling you, this list is huge. This list is long. I'm going to tell you, there are about as many women for the VP pick on the list that I have seen as there were candidates, mixed candidates, men and women, as we saw on the stage, like 20 people. Now, I don't know whether he's going to get strong-armed into definitely picking a Black woman for this position, but there's certainly it looks pretty bad. All of the picks that he has look pretty bad. So shout out to the Unique Views as the silent majority. I hope it's real. Right on. So I'm going to take you guys to this clip. Hope you guys are doing well and have a great beginning of the week. And we'll start with a clip of Bass. We'll have more on Bass coming right up. Thank you guys so much for joining me on this segment.
Joe Biden's third attempt to run for president. History is lost when you live in the eternal present, as we are now, but it's worth remembering some facts. 3 times. The first time Biden ran was in 1988. That was before most of the people who work on the show were born. And he was caught lying about his biography in speeches and forced to drop out. Biden suggested to audiences that he had grown up in a coal mining family in Wales. That's not true. Joe Biden is actually from America. His father sold cars in Wilmington. Biden went to Catholic prep school in the suburbs. So it was pretty embarrassing. It took 20 years before Biden ran again, and when he did, it did not go well. In 2008, Joe Biden got a total of 1% of the vote in the Iowa caucuses, and he dropped out that night. Joe Biden, whatever his strengths, turns out to be so bad at running for president that even Barack Obama, supposedly his close friend, repeatedly refused to endorse him. He just can't win. That was Barack Obama's view. Then the Wuhan coronavirus arrived. Democratic governors shut down the country. Millions lost their jobs. The economy tanked. Americans huddled in their homes, cut off from one another and deeply miserable. From his basement, strategically cloistered away in silence, Joe Biden shot ahead in the polls. Not because of anything he did, he just happened to be there. As of tonight, Joe Biden could win the race. Unfortunately, if he does, Joe Biden cannot govern the country. He isn't capable of it. He's all but admitted that. He said he won't run for a second term. So Biden's running mate will be the most consequential VP pick in American history, and soon we'll know who it is. Apparently, the announcement is coming in the next week. As of tonight, Senator Kamala Harris of California seems like the frontrunner. She's certainly the best known. Harris is a product of the same highly credentialed yet deeply unimpressive world that spawned much of our media. Needless to say, they love her. She's one of them. The public, though, has been much less impressed, including Democrats. Harris was so unpopular with Democratic primary voters that she never made it to the first vote in the primaries. When she dropped out in December, Harris was polling at around 3%. The rap on Harris in exit polls is that she's a fraud. She doesn't really believe in anything. She'll say whatever it takes. Of course, that is also Harris's primary strength. Here she is promising free health care to illegal aliens.
So you support giving universal health care, Medicare for all, to people who are in this country illegally?
Let me just be very clear about this. I am opposed to any policy that would deny in our country any human being from access to public safety, public education, or public health, period.
Oh, now wait a second, you may be wondering. I'm sitting in my house, maybe unemployed, paying a huge percentage of my net worth for health care. So why should people who aren't even allowed to be in this country in the first place get it for free at my expense? And by the way, how can a government that's already $27 trillion in debt afford to pay for the rest of the world's medical bills? Now, those are all good questions. Kamala Harris has no answers. Fixing problems is not the point of the exercise. Winning is the point. And over the years, Harris has been willing to do pretty much whatever it takes to win, including use the power of her office to crush political opponents. As the Attorney General of California, Harris relentlessly defended her big donors in the abortion industry. When a journalist called David Daleiden criticized Planned Parenthood in a documentary, Kamala Harris sent the police to his home. Daleiden later described the authoritarian nightmare Harris unleashed on his life.
They got a highly political search warrant to conduct a political raid on my home to seize the unreleased undercover footage. By the way, it's black letter California law that you are not supposed to get a search warrant to seize the unpublished materials of a journalist, whether citizen journalist, professional journalist. But that's what Kamala Harris went ahead and did at the
All right, guys, thanks so much for joining me on this segment of Black Spring with Autumn. I do believe that is not the right clip on this one, but I think I have that one a little bit on the Scrabble there. So I will bring you the correct clip on that, but no less. Kamala Harris is certainly the other. She's number 2 she's my number 2 in this on the list right now of the black women, if you will, on this segment and throughout. So I will take you to the correct clip on this because the list is supposed to be short, but I would imagine that it's not a short list if Joe Biden didn't pick his pick already. I think his list is not as short as he would like everybody to think, and it's just a bit of a political move. So I'm going to take you to the correct clip now, but no less. Kamala Harris is certainly on the docket. So thank you guys so much. I'll give you the right clip now.
News Digital, and America's streaming service, Fox Nation, America's News, and much more.
Good morning, everyone. Let me just thank our leadership for the foresight to take up the legislation to remove these symbols that to me are hate in this particular period of time. And I think it's so appropriate that we do this also in honor of Mr. Lewis. The main honor for Mr. Lewis to me is to get a signature on the Voting Rights Act, but this is also a way to honor his legacy because what he fought for every day is the exact opposite of these symbols. The people's house, as I call the Capitol, can never really be for the people, with reminders of a painful history that sought to continue the enslavement and our control of the African-American population. And just imagine what it feels like as an African-American to know that my ancestors built the Capitol, but yet there are monuments to the very people that enslaved my ancestors. And while statues do reflect an aspect of our history, statues are not just historical markers, but are tributes, a way to honor an individual, and these individuals do not deserve to be honored. Their role in our history should absolutely be remembered, and I do think as we go through this period in our history, it's important not just to move these people away, but to understand who they were. Because when you do learn about some of the horrific crimes that they committed, including mass murder, you would really wonder how they ever got here in the first place. Their role in history should be remembered, but it should be accurately told so individuals like these never rise to powerful positions in our nation again. Personally, as a Black lawmaker, the presence of these statues represent an acceptance of white supremacy and racism, something that we are fighting day in and day out to dismantle. The protest that took place after the brutal murder of George Floyd initially focused on police abuse, especially the long history of abuse involving African Americans. The protest movement has now expanded to examine our history and the institutions of our society. This new movement has the potential to contribute to moving us to become a more perfect union. So I'm proud to join my colleagues today to introduce this bill that not only removes the bust of Chief Justice Rob Taney, but of all the other statues of the defenders of slavery and segregation located in the U.S. Capitol. I have heard that somewhere in the Capitol there's a jail that people were put in at one point in time, and maybe that would be a proper location for these statues. As the world watches the United States during this moral moment, we must be a reflection of the leadership that we project globally. It is a time to replace the monuments of oppression with the monuments of liberty. Thank you.
All right, guys. Thank you so much for joining me on this segment of Black Spring with Autumn. And so we were talking a little bit about the VP pick, or just a little bit of the VP pick options here. I'm going to read a few comments here. Shout out to the Definition of Anarchy. Thank you so much for coming in. Thank you for your loyalty. Really appreciate you. Loch Ness Monster says he was going to pick Kamala, but after the backlash at the idea of Biden picking her, he has to pick someone else. It's obvious it will be a Black woman. They want those pander points. Okay, Unique View says Dems have California. Should Dems pick someone from a toss-up state? Oh, that's a good question. And from Let the Truth Be Told, Change History, Change America. Thank you guys so much for all you do. And thank you so much for you coming in on your Monday. I really appreciate it. So we'll keep going here. So I was just giving you just a little bit of background information on Bass, which Bass pretty much is, I think the danger in which to me it's the same. It's the same. Same script. I mean, I think she's getting some scrutiny or some attacks for some comments that she made about Cuba, Cuba, but she wouldn't be the first one, and she's not going to be the last. But let's just be real. The left they have a globalist agenda. I think many times they have global mandates. So of course, are they going to? They're empathizing with any, whether they are ally or adversary, whatever. It doesn't really matter. They sympathize. I mean, you could just go back to the Soleimani attack that ended him. You had an outpouring of Democrats criticizing Trump administration and the action on following through with what seemed like a tip similar to Hillary's Benghazi, which appeared is what they really wanted from that situation. But they sympathized. They sympathized with another dictator or a tyrant that has shed blood, American blood, and they do this all the time. And in fact, Bass has already offered an apology for that. But the apology tours are pretty popular as well. I mean, Biden can say whatever he wants. He can tell you whether you're black or not, and people will pat him on the head. No, it's kind of you can pat him on the head and just let him keep going on and keep voting for him. Some people, that's, an apology tour is all it takes, because the Democrats are for the people, right? Touchdown Sean, the Wade in the water woman only wants to create separation and division. Chrysler, whoever they pick, they're going to become president anyway, because I don't think Joe Biden is going to last its full term if by some slim chance he wins. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It's going to be what did Tucker refer to it as? It's like a consequential president, or I'm calling it the affirmative action presidency. That's what it looks like to me. So that person's going to wear a lot of hats. Thank you guys so much for tuning in to this segment. So let's move on. Let's move on from the pick. Hope everybody's doing well. Let me do a few shout outs here. Shout out to Chrysler Imperial H. Thank you so much for all that you do. Shout out to Touchdown Sean. Shout out to Let the Truth Be Told by the former Gary L. Youngkees Jr. I'm sorry. If you don't want me to do that, I won't do it. But nice to have you here. Shout out to Unique View. Shout out to Loch Ness Monster. Shout out to The Definition of Anarchy. And shout out to Derek C. Williams for sharing out the stream today. I really appreciate that. Throwing a little caution to the wind on your Monday. All right, so let's keep going here. So I'm going to give you the next segment we're going to go into. We're going to have a little bit of, we'll have a little bit from a Planned Parenthood scenario that over the weekend. Now, of course, by now we all know that, whether you get a permit, whether you want to talk about getting permits to draw on or paint on the streets of New York, we've all seen that we've seen that happen in New York. But something else happened in New York. Thank you very much, Gary L. Youngkees Jr. Thank you so much. So I'm going to take you over to a scene from Planned Parenthood, and we'll check out the standards. And you might find this interesting. Once again, I'd like to thank everybody for joining me on this segment of Black Spring with Autumn. I appreciate you guys for doing that care on the housework and hitting that like or thumbs down for the channelytics. I really appreciate it. So we're going to go to a clip right now.
we are outside the Planned Parenthood. Erica Capoletti and
Warner DePriest.
Thank you. I'm with Students for Life. We have a nice army of pro-lifers for life. We are on the side of God's truth. Woo! They are a culture of death, and we are going to expose their lies, deceit, and just all negativity that they constantly hurt women.
Planned Parenthood is a racist organization. We are here today to show that, okay? We are standing with Black Preborn Lives Matter. This is government censorship. If we were writing Black Lives Matter, we would not be in this position.
Can you guys just walk through again what you're going to be doing today?
We are simply sidewalk chalking.
That is it. We do it every Saturday. I'm a part of a group of a dedicated folks that sidewalk chalk regularly here. And this is our constitutional right. This is public property. This is not Planned Parenthood's America anymore. This is pro-life America. We are the pro-life generation, and we will abolish abortion in our lifetime.
Yeah. Right. Yes, so you're right. All right. Hi, I'm Rachel. Were you born here?
We're not going to get that far.
What are you right? Wait, what are you?
This is our constitutional right. We do this every Saturday.
I need to tell you now that if you continue talking, you're going to be placed under arrest for defacing property.
We do this every Saturday.
Okay, I've given you your warning. You understand that, right? If you continue talking, you're going to be placed under arrest. Okay. You have a 1, 2, these 2 people.
You know they do this every Saturday, right?
Every Saturday. This is completely public property.
I majored in political science. This is public property.
Every Saturday, people are here talking.
This is government censorship.
And arresting them because they are simply putting Black preborn lives matter. You gotta be joking. You gotta be absolutely joking that you would take young people that are simply putting on a sidewalk chalk that they are standing for preborn Black lives. You absolutely have to be joking. We're standing in front of an abortuary where they kill children.
Sir, stay on the sidewalk, please. Stay on the sidewalk, please.
To the police department because they're simply putting chalk on the sidewalk. This is absolutely absurd. I cannot believe that the DC police will stand in front of a place that kills Black children and they're taking people to prison, to jail, just because they're putting on a sidewalk Black preborn lives matter. This is absurd. This is the city where Frederick Douglass lived. You gotta be joking.
Thank you guys so much for tuning in to this segment of Black Spring with Autumn. So there you go. You know, you got another, a demonstration there, and but you can see, the cops are like right there on the scene. I don't exactly know the laws on chalking versus painting on the cement or the asphalt. I don't know. But it does, and then the people are shouting in the background, oh, well, they do this every Saturday. It does seem to be a little bit, the standards seem to be double. By now you've probably seen, BLM signs everywhere, not just on sidewalks or walkways. You've probably seen them everywhere. But I just thought you might find that interesting. He says, do not use cup. Let's see. All right. So I'm going to take you to another clip now. Thank you guys so much for tuning in to this segment. I'm going to take you to another segment today in which we're going to jump over a little bit to the pandemic and the management on that. And you might find this question very interesting if you have not seen it. You might find it interesting. So I'm going to take you over there now. So this is going to be featuring, we're going to be featuring Fauci and his response on Capitol Hill. Thank you guys so much.
The chair now recognizes for 5 minutes Mr. Jordan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Dr. Fauci, do protests increase the spread of the virus?
Do protests increase the spread of the virus? I think I can make a general statement.
Well, 500,000 protesters on June 6th alone.
Yeah.
I'm just asking that number of people, does it increase the spread of the virus?
Crowding together, particularly when you're not wearing a mask, contributes to the spread of the virus.
Should we limit the protesting?
I'm not sure what you mean. How do we say limit the protesting?
Should government limit the protesting?
I don't think that's relevant to.
Well, you just said if it increases the spread of the virus, I'm just asking, should we limit it?
Well, I'm not in a position to determine what the government can do in a forceful way.
Well, you make all kinds of recommendations. You make comments on dating, on baseball, on everything you can imagine. I'm just asking you just said that protests increase the spread. I'm just asking you, should we try to limit the protests?
No, I think I would leave that to people who have more of a position to do that. I can tell you.
Government stopping people from going to church, Dr. Fauci.
Yeah.
Last week in the Calvary Chapel case, 5 liberals on the Supreme Court said it was okay for Nevada to limit church services. Justice Gorsuch said it best. He said, there's no world in which the Constitution permits Nevada to favor Caesar's Palace over Calvary Chapel. I'm just asking, is there a world where the Constitution says you can favor one First Amendment liberty, protesting, over another, practicing your faith?
I'm not favoring anybody over anybody. I'm just making a statement that's a broad statement that avoid crowds of any type, no matter where you are, because that leads to the acquisition and transmission. And I don't judge one crowd versus another crowd. When you're in a crowd, particularly if you're not wearing a mask, that induces the spread.
It's a simple question, doctor. Should we limit the protest? Government is obviously limiting people going to church. And look, there's been no violence that I can see at church. I haven't seen people during a church service go out and harm police officers or burn buildings. But we know that, for 63 days, 9 weeks, it's been happening in Portland.
Right. Yeah.
Well, one night in Chicago, 49 officers were injured, but no limit to protests. But boy, you can't go to church on Sunday.
What was the?
I don't know how many times I can answer that. I'm not going to opine on limiting anything. I'm just going to tell you.
You've opined on a lot of things, Dr. Fauci.
Yeah, but I've never.
This is something that directly impacts the spread of the virus, and I'm asking your position on the protest.
Yeah, I'm not going to opine on limiting anything. I'm telling you what it is, the danger. And you can make your own conclusion about that. You should stay away from crowds, no matter where the crowds are.
Government has stopped people from going to work. In fact, just in New Jersey 4 days ago, Ian Smith, Frank Trombetta were arrested for trying to operate their business, their gym. They were arrested. But my bet is if these two individuals who own this gym were outside just in front of their gym, and all the people who were working out in their gym were outside protesting, they'd been just fine. But because they were in the gym working out, actually running their business, they got arrested. You think that's okay?
I'm not going to opine on who gets arrested and who does not. You get where I'm going. I'm telling you, as a public health official, I say crowds.
Do you see the inconsistency, though, Dr. Fauci?
There's no inconsistency, Congressman.
So you're allowed to protest, millions of people on one day in crowds yelling, screaming, but you try to run your business, you get arrested? And if you stood right outside of that same business and protested, you wouldn't get arrested? You don't see an inconsistency there?
I don't understand what you're asking me as a public health official to opine on who should get arrested or not. That's not my position. You could ask
you've advocated for certain businesses. You've advocated for certain businesses to be shut down. I'm just asking you on your position on the protest. I haven't seen one. We've heard a lot about hair salons. I haven't seen one hairstylist who, between haircuts, goes out and attacks police or sets something on fire. But we've seen all kinds of that stuff during protests, and we know the protests actually increase the spread of the virus. You've said that.
I said crowds. I didn't say specifically. I didn't say protests do anything.
So the protests don't increase the spread of the virus?
I didn't say that. You're putting words in my mouth.
No, I just want an answer to the question. Do the protests increase the spread of the virus?
I don't have any scientific evidence that anything. I can tell you that crowds are known, particularly when you don't have a mask, to increase the acquisition and transmission. No matter what.
So you don't have a position on whether the protests increase the spread of the virus or don't increase the spread of the virus?
I'm saying that crowds, wherever the crowds are, can give you an increased probability that there's going to be acquisition and transmission.
But do you understand Americans' concern? Protesting, particularly according to the Democrats, is just fine, but you can't go to work, you can't go to school, you can't go to church. There's limits placed on all three of those fundamental activities, First Amendment activities, but protesting is just fine.
You know, the chair now recognizes for 5 minutes Mr. Jordan.
Thank you, Mr.
All right, guys. So I'm sure if you hadn't seen that was kind of, you know, I'm not surprised the way that Fauci responded, but you got to admit he did contradict himself quite a few times. And, you know, he's a technocrat. He's just doing what technocrats do. And so, yeah, he's not going to answer the question directly. He's not going to identify protesters. He's not going to do any of that. But he says, "Oh, I don't judge one crowd over another, but a crowd is a crowd." You know, I'm not sure if anybody walked away with any clarity on that. But I would say that Representative Jordan took the win on that one. So I'm just not sure where this is going to end. Like how much more flip-flopping can he do? I mean, how much more? And still have credibility. How much more flip-flopping can you do? I mean, a second opinion, you know, at what point are we not entitled to a second opinion or a third opinion or a fourth opinion as Americans? You know, we don't have a state elected doctor. We don't. But in this case, we've got a mess and flip-flopping. So according to Chrysler, he is skirting around the question and make you mad because I don't answer instant questions. The question directly, it's either a yes or a no. Yeah. He couldn't come out with it. But you know, nobody, I bet he won't be challenged. I mean, good job for Jordan for bringing it up because it wasn't going to come up otherwise. I think Fauci they're trying to reshape. He's an elite that they're trying to make him more appealing to people. You know, and they've got him out. You've seen him, you know, what was he in DC with the Nationals, like throwing a baseball, horrible. I mean, I'm not a baseball player. or do I have a great arm of any stretch? But yeah, it's like they're trying to make these auxiliaries appear warmer and there's just, you know, Fauci he's not there's not an appealing there. He's a bureaucrat. He's no different than the UN's appointed their health general, or the WHO. He's no different than Tedros Adhanom. Shout out to everybody that's in the stream. Hope you guys are doing well. Let's see. And then we do have an interesting post from Biden, which apparently Biden himself is already kind of irritated. He's starting to set off some side eyes on the left when he has called for violent protesters to be arrested, apparently. So once again, I'd like to thank everybody for joining me on this segment of Black Spring with Autumn. I will be bringing you that clip. It's actually just going to be, we're going to do the article there. But I'm thinking that, that's not going very well on the campaign trail. He's flopping too. You got flip-flopping going on. Nonstop flip-flopping going on. Hope everybody's doing well. Now, this article that we're going to go into just a second here is going to come from the New York Post. And this one is actually entitled, Biden calls for violent protesters to be, quote, found, arrested, and tried. So, that might be that might be an original thought there, without a teleprompter. Was it real? Or was it the teleprompter? Shout out to everybody that's in the stream. So I'm going to share a bit of this article with you. Thank you guys so much for coming in. And this is from New York Post. Not my vetted source, but sometimes I have to go back to something that I'm paraphrasing something that Trump said on the ballot, the mail-in ballot situation. Apparently, one of these, maybe that was Washington Post. Maybe they got that one right. Maybe New York Post got this one right. I mean, I'm beginning to wonder if the tide is starting to turn here a little bit. It seems that the media kind of gives you a clue as to the trajectory. Does this mean that Biden is going to start to turn more? Is he going to start to try to appear more moderate in this less than 100 days that we have to go? Shout out to everybody that's in the stream. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. I really appreciate it. So let's go in for this one. All right. So this is written by Stephen Nelson. All right. According to this, Democratic presidential candidate Joe Biden on Tuesday called for the arrest of violent protesters while taking questions for the first time in 28 days. Now, this is, I got to tell you, this election cycle is so bizarre. We've got candidates from coming out of staying in basements doing interviews, and we don't have a VP pick yet. We don't have, this is when he speaks, it's a huge buzz. So I'll continue, The former vice president struck a discordant tone with fellow liberals who insist protests against the May killing of George Floyd by Minnesota police are peaceful, and that authorities are to blame for any violence in Portland and other cities. That's a bit of a change, right? A shift. That's a shift in the tone. It's more than a shift. That's what I'm just thinking. Are you going to try to drive? Are you going to try to drive more moderate to the end of this situation, to the end of this cycle? So with that said, it says, quote, this is Biden, quote, I think we don't need to hold those who violate the law accountable, end quote. Biden said, quote, we should never let what's done in a march for equal rights overcome what the reason for the march is. And that's what these folks are doing. And they should be arrested, found, arrested, and tried, end quote. Now that's your New York Post there. And so we're going to continue here. It says Biden's call for the prosecution of violent protesters may further alienate leftist politicians uneasy with Biden's decades of centrist policies. So you see what I'm saying? His trajectory is changing, and I don't know if that's a political strategy right now, or is it a part of the plan to try to siphon off some voters, to siphon off a few Americans? Shout out to you. Cold War Jesus says Biden doesn't know what's going on. He just vocalizes what his team tells him to say. Thank you so much. So I'll finish that one up. Thank you guys so much for all of you for coming in. Yes, I do believe he's a bit of a puppet, and he's going to be, even the people that are endorsing Biden, they're endorsing Biden based on how big of a puppet he will be. Will he'll just be a nod, a yes, man, yes. Is that what he's going to be until he hands the torch to Madam President of the United States, Madam VP. So I'm going to finish that one up. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. All right. So also you have a little bit of a tag here. See, we're rounding out this week. Rep. Rashida Tlaib, a Democrat from Michigan, said she would not endorse Biden. And a co-chair of Vermont Senator Bernie Sanders' presidential campaign, former Ohio State Senator Nina Turner, likened voting for Biden to eating a bowl of, you know the rest. We did look at that just a bit last week, but the enthusiasm, the electability, the likability is a bit floundering with Biden. What can I say? Is it a Hail Mary? Whoever they pick, whoever the VP pick is. So, ladies and gentlemen, I don't know. Will we know by next week who the VP pick is? I don't know. I cannot tell. I think it's just another part of the strategy. So to round this one out, Biden largely steer cleared of gas on Tuesday, but mistakenly said that Trump canceled plans to hold the Republican National Convention in Tallahassee, Florida, before correcting himself to say Jacksonville. So there you go on that. There you go on the orientation there. Shout out to everybody in the stream. Shout out to Chrysler Imperial H. And shout out to Cold War Jesus. Shout out to The Unique View. Shout out to Let the Truth Be Told. Shout out to Loch Ness Monster. Shout out to The Definition of Anarchy. Thank you so much for coming in. Shout out to Touchdown Sean. I appreciate you. Shout out to Unique View. And so we'll keep going here. Once again, I'd like to thank everybody for joining me on this segment of Black Spring with Autumn. So this next clip is going to take you to, I'm a little bit, what can I say, for the lack of a better word? I was stunned by the headline of this, but then when I put it in context, it's interesting. Okay. So what I'm going to bring you right now is an interview between Anderson Cooper and Tyler Perry. If you guys aren't familiar with Tyler Perry, of course, he is kind of a mega movie mogul, if you will. And I want to go ahead and play this clip for you. And he has a bit of an interesting, or at least he has a much more moderate view on some things. And so I'm going to just bring that to you. So bring you back for some commentary. But thank you guys so much once again for joining me on this segment of Black Spring with Autumn. Once again, I hope you guys are having a great Monday. Sometimes it's hard to move the needle on Mondays, but you guys make it easier.
Whoa. Hollywood star Tyler Perry goes against BLM damnation.
Okay, give me just one second here. We're going to do the actual original clip on this one so that you guys can have the full context here. Thank you guys so much for tuning in on this segment of Black Spring with Autumn. Okay, so we're going to give you a little context. Now, the context of this is written, this is one-on-one, Tyler Perry on race in America. I'm not going to play you this whole thing because it's a little bit excruciating coming from Anderson Cooper. And not, this thing is not without some excruciating elements, but we'll get into those later. So I'll start here. And thank you guys so much for tuning in to this segment. Let the truth be told. Thank you so much. Appreciate it. So I'm going to play this for you. Hope you guys are doing well.
Message is being hijacked by all of some other groups or I was very optimistic.
And before, when you see the protests that are taking place, when you see the the outpouring of people of all colors?
I was very optimistic. I was very optimistic, at the horror of what happened after the death of George Floyd. I became optimistic when I saw so many people get it. It was the same thing that happens during the Civil Rights Movement when people saw on television that what happened on the Edmund Pettus Bridge, what happened with Bull Connor, what happened in all of these moments when people saw it. When white people saw it, they got engaged. They wanted to help. So when they saw George Floyd's death, this horrific, horrible death played out, as this man pleaded for his life and begged, said please many, many times, seeing it changes everything. So I became very, very optimistic when everybody galvanized together, because I know that's when change comes. When people galvanize and come together as one, that's when change happens. But lately I've been very, very concerned that the message is being hijacked by some other groups or political ads and parties that are trying to stop the message of what we're asking for here is police reform, right? So yeah, I was, but I'm worried now. It's because of what I'm seeing.
You have your son is 5 years old, and obviously having a child changes one's perspective on things and makes you see things with a fresh eyes in many senses. Have you had, I know he's 5 years old, have you had a conversation with him about race? I know it's something you've written about, just the sort of the feeling of, gosh, I'm going to have this conversation sometime soon.
Yeah, I don't want to listen to me. I'm trying to push that as long as I can, because there's something about the level of innocence that's ripped from a child when they have to face race. Like, I love watching him play with his friends and coming home from school and talk about his friends, never describing them by race at all, ever, not once in these years that he's been talking and smart enough to ask me all kinds of questions. So my hope is that I can keep it from him as long as I can. But I know that being his father, being a black man in America, and doing the things that I've done, I'm going to have that conversation with him. And I know it's coming soon. I know it's going to be painful, but I want to listen. If I can let him hold on to that innocence just for another day, I'm going to give him that.
Mm. Your great grandfather was enslaved in this country. You are also the owner of the largest movie studio in the U.S., which just happens to be built on what was a military base for the Confederate Army. The arc of that is an extraordinary thing. The president is arguing that Confederate statues, monuments are part of our heritage. As somebody who's a storyteller, what story do you think these statues tell you and us, and should they come down?
For me, I growing up in New Orleans, and there's a circle that's called Lee Circle that takes you from where the streetcar actually goes around it to take you into the French Quarters and downtown. And you see Robert E. Lee up top, and there's a Robert E. Lee High School. So these, and listen, as a kid, I loved the Dukes of Hazzard until I realized what the flag represented as I got older. And again, that's going back to holding on to the innocence.
All right, guys. So here again, this is Tyler Perry in this segment that we're looking at. So the thing about it is, my assertion here is that, it just seems that the liberal supremacist has an opposite duty to tell Black people how to not only to what they can be offended by, or what their level of sensitivity should be to racism. But now, did you see in that how Anderson Cooper basically starts, you have a son. Are you gonna tell him? It's just, I'm just thinking, does that make him derelict a parent because he's not doing what you want him to do? He just talked about innocence, and that's a very pure thing that kids have, until one day you start telling kids they have to choose. And the kid's probably enjoying being a 5-year-old, and then here your dad is on national TV having to hear some babble from a white liberal supremacist about how you should talk to your kid about issues of race in America. It's just pretty despicable. And I'm really surprised You know, this is Tyler Perry, who's made tons of movies. He's had a lot of success. And I'm like, why don't you shut that down and say, you know, I got it. I'm the parent and I will handle it as I see fit. But you know, why? I mean, I'm just thinking Anderson Cooper is so full of it. His eyes are brown. You are not concerned about Tyler Perry's 5-year-old. You really aren't. He's just literally wanting to spread a transgenerational victimhood. Like, make sure you spread that victimhood now. Don't be derelict on your duty to spread victimhood, and don't do it. I'm just thinking, that's not your place, even if you weren't a liberal. Ay. I just that was hard to watch for many reasons. I mean, I can respect Tyler Perry for at least not being radical and conflating. I may need to go back a little bit more, because at least he talks about in the beginning the call for defunding the police versus reform. That, you know, the liberals always conflate one thing. They find a way to conflate anything to euphemize what their agenda is. You know, they'll put anything out in front of it, just as long as they achieve their goal. So I'm just saying, yeah. Cold War, the talk. What are we talking about? The birds and the bees? Is it pressing? It's almost like it's an urgency. You know, it's urgent. You gotta tell them. You know, it's when you open the door tomorrow, it might be on your doorstep. You gotta. It's like, it's an entire campaign. You know, I don't know if you guys remember the DARE program, where you may have, you know, a group of police officers that come to your school and they do this program and they talk about, you know, they educate you on, you know, drugs and, you know, all these things. But they're again trying to control Black people, control this man's family, control what ideology or how he delivers the ideology to his child. I mean, why do you have to talk about it? Why do you have to talk about it until why not just leave it alone until you have a problem? Why create something? Because no matter what Tyler Perry says, no matter what his credibility is, no matter what his rhetoric is, it's still not going to be his son's experience. Everybody's experience is unique. It's still not going to be Tyler Perry's America. Will not be his son's America. Tyler Perry's America was probably not his parents' America. It's evolving, but it's going in a sad direction. And I think we'll go to have a clip to share with you on that, just about the culture of the country. That, you know, you've got culture, people ratting people out. What was it? Mask Up? Was it Mask Up Indiana or one of these Midwest states? They've got an entire hotline for you to call if you find somebody not wearing a mask. That is not American culture. That is more like Nazi Germany, or what the guy in Garcetti in Los Angeles said, you know, snitches get rewarded. So if you snitch on somebody, you're going to get a reward. And so I'm just, I mean, that's my, I go into a rant on some of these things, but I'm just thinking, you know, I'm sick of these white liberal supremacists talking to Black people as if they're their subordinates, or as if he has some kind of jurisdiction over the way Tyler Perry would raise his son or talk about issues, social issues or cultural issues. And everybody knows that the Southeast, or the Southeast United States, it's still a very unique place compared to the rest of the states. It still is. There's still a lot of emotional segregation there. There's still a lot of emotional segregation there. But Anderson Cooper needs to make sure that he keeps a steady pulse, a steady hand steady legacy going. And I'm going to be honest, that's you know, I don't have a lot of stock in Hollywood, but for a second there, you know, I was thinking, okay, Tyler Perry, at least you are not parroting the narrative. So with that said, I'll give you a little the front of that clip, and then we'll move on to, we'll wrap out with the cultural, with a little bit of commentary on the culture of things and things that are going away. Thank you guys so much for tuning in on this segment of Black Spring with Autumn.
And one of the things you wrote, you said, it's my hope that as we continue these hard conversations and come out of our respective corners to talk to each other, but most of all to hear, we got to start hearing each other so that this pain, this grief, this mourning in America will give way to mourning in America. I found that really powerful. And, you know, I was thinking about this yesterday. The Attorney General of the United States, Bill Barr, said he doesn't believe there is systemic racism in police departments. If you were to have a conversation with Barr, what would you want him to hear?
Well, wow, what a great question. There are many things I've wanted to hear, but more than anything, just to understand the journey of someone who is Black in America. Even me sitting here talking to you now at 50 years old, all the things that I've accomplished, all the things that I've overcome, I still get pulled over by police. Some recognize me, some don't, because I'm in a nice car in a neighborhood that they don't even know that I live in until they realize it's me. So I would want him to understand that there is bias. There are those things. And here's the greatest gift that I've been given is I've been able to live on both sides of the wealth gap. I've been extremely poor and I've managed to do very, very well. And I understand how someone can come to that conclusion when you live in your own world, when you live in your own bubble, and you're not even open to hearing or seeing it another way. So I understand how he got there, but his thinking is very wrong.
Are you optimistic now in a way that you haven't been before when you see the protests that are taking place, when you see the outpouring of people of all colors?
I was very optimistic. I was very optimistic about, at the horror of what happened after the death of George Floyd. I became optimistic.
All right, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in to this segment of Black Spring with Autumn. So that was generally, I just wanted you to see the way that he opened it up. He did open up the tone of the interview or the conversation. I could tell that I'm thinking that Anderson Cooper wasn't really sure how it was going to go, because he wasn't parroting the whole narrative of defund the police. He wasn't saying those things. In fact, he was saying we need to fund the police. I mean, I have studios. We need police. In fact, we need more police. So I can put that link into the description box for you, or even put it into this particular stream. But the thing that I do, it's nice to see that he did admit that, look, I've had both sides. I've been a poor person, been extremely poor, and then I've also done very well. But many times you don't get that. But then it's like, you go from that to Anderson needs to make sure that you pass down your any level of victimhood that you might have felt. That was his responsibility on that. So once again, I'd like to thank everybody for joining me on this segment of Black Spring with Autumn. So we're going to have the final segment of this show. It's going to come from a piece that Glenn Beck did on, kind of we'll tag out on a bit of cultural changes and cultural differences. I mean, you guys have seen it. We talked about it. We tagged a little bit on it earlier about things that are going away. Of course, you had Aunt Jemima. I think they really tried hard to cancel the Goya products, but I think, America shows up big time when we're under attack. America will come out and support, and counter the cancel culture. Will come out against that or show up in big numbers. So I'll bring you that clip, and then we will tag out on this segment of Black Spring with Autumn. Thank you guys so much for coming in today. I really appreciate it. Really appreciate you guys for coming out. Hope you guys are having a great Monday. Also, if you could take a look at, there is at least one article on the community tab, a little bit of mask. There's some information or some mask edification on that, on the community tab. Also continue to check out your Patreon tabs. And so from there, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take you to this last segment of the show. Thank you guys so much. And see, that's what I'm saying. I still get pulled over by the police too. And that's what I'm saying. You know, these are just general things. I've been pulled over by the police, and I'm not Hollywood by any stretch, and nobody recognized me. You know, I think the cop was pretty cruel. And he was a state trooper. And I felt really bad. I'm not sure what I'm not sure what I was responding to, you know, and he happened to be a black state trooper that pulled me over, but he wasn't nice. He wasn't nice at all. I mean, and not saying that he has to be nice. He just needs to be respectful. That's all I ask. You don't have to care about me. Just be respectful. But that particular day, it was kind of an after work. It's like after work, everything just feels a little bit less. You're getting some release because you're going home, but then you might put a little bit more weight on your gas pedal going in on the drive. I mean, so once again, thank you guys for joining me on this segment, and thanks for entertaining the rants. But we will certainly be keeping an eye on the VP picks this week. I'm not sure if it's going to happen this week, but I mean, they're certainly running out of time. I'm not sure what happened. You know, I'm not sure where they're going to wind up. But this is a piece by Glenn Beck on preserving history before there's nothing left. So that also brought me to my other question about, are we the citizen historians? Are we going to be responsible for hanging on to what things you want to pass down? You know, it's like, it's kind of sad. It's a cosign to me that we're coming to it's sad that it's like we're coming to the end of a life. It's almost like a funeral. And then this sounds really depressing and really dark. It's almost like a funeral if we're saying goodbye to things that once meant something or was valuable to us, culturally or whatever. You know, it's sad that we're saying goodbye to those things, but we're being strong armed. We're being forced to say goodbye to these things, and why? So that's where I want to close out with this. Shout out to you, to the rapper. Thank you so much for coming in. It's been a lifetime. The rapper, it's nice to see you. You said, get this Facebook, quote, fact checked a photo of the first black politicians who were Republicans as false. What FB needs to be charged with racism for that? You know what? I think I've seen a fantastic photo of there were 6 Republicans that were black. I think maybe it was like a 19th century picture. I'm not sure if that's the photo that you're referring to, but yeah, their fact checkers are absolutely, you know, a nightmare. And those 4 CEOs they did appear before the Judiciary Committee last week, and they had no answers. They had no answers for the questions that were being asked about the kinds of things that they put out. And who's doing these fact checking? And do you have a diverse group of people that are doing these things? Do you have any diversity in your when it comes to political ideology serving on these fact checking systems? It can't be. So I'm really curious about that. Thank you so much for shouting that out, for letting me know. black politicians from the South were black Republicans were the first. Now, you know, for those, there are some black conservatives out here that have been to the White House recently, and I think they did a very nice replica. They did an updated replica of black conservatives. So, you know, the thing about it is, I think in this culture, I think because the Republican Party has been associated or demonized or strawmanned by the left and the Democrats for so long, you know, many people are not aware of the history of blacks in the Republican Party. That there was a tradition of voting Republican amongst the black community. And then in the 1960s, somebody hijacked it and got credit all under the name or under the banner of civil rights. And I'm saying LBJ would be who I'm referring to. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and take you to that. That's a great picture. It is very iconic, and the past one, the 19th century one, I think, as well as the new one, which I think includes. I'm not sure. I think what's his name? Is it Kingface? I think Kingface is in that photo. I think Isaiah Washington's in that photo. Quite a few, but I can't name them all. But they really should get it together. I mean, they're not going to, because they are a part of the machine, the propaganda machine. So I'm going to take you guys over to this clip. It's actually a very good clip, and but we will close on this one. So thank you so much to the rapper. Thank you guys so much for taking care on your thumbs up and thumbs down today on Black Spring. I appreciate it. Hope to have an announcement for you guys before the end of the week. Thank you guys so much. All right.
I had to preserve gigantic vault that can take, but this is the most well-laid plan I've ever seen. So when they started taking the Land of Lakes, you know, Indian off of the Land of Lakes butter, they started taking Aunt Jemima out of the stores. Aunt Jemima was a real person with a great story. She was born in a log cabin. She was a slave. She was freed. Then she became a very successful entrepreneur. Aunt Jemima was a real person. And we're just erasing it. So my wife and I thought, what else is going to be erased? What is going to be left at the end of this? And we immediately started thinking about the great American art and the art that tells our story, the Norman Rockwells and many of the illustrators, honestly, from the turn of the century. All of this stuff is going to be lost. So we started to collect things that are controversial, shall we say, in today's world. And if I have to put it into a clay pot and hide them in a cave, so when a generation that is sane eventually comes about, we will not forget, the world will not forget who America was, what America was. I'm telling you, we're 20 years away from not believing that we went to the moon. So yesterday, I want to share this with you because I want to show you that we each have a role to play and we can each do what we can do. I'm going to show you what I'm doing and then ask you, what can you do? What can you preserve? What books, what history, what art, what anything, what can you preserve? Because we need to preserve it because it will be gone for the next generation. So two things came in yesterday to my house, and I wanted to show them. A couple of weeks ago, there was a painting that I could not believe was not selling, And there's a couple of reasons for it, but one of them, I think, is just the nature of the painting. It's of slaves. And can we put that painting up? Nope, not that one, the other one. This is, do you have the other one? It's a...
So, you need a look.
Yeah, there it is. It's a Winslow Homer. Now, Winslow Homer, if you know anything about the art world, he is, I mean, American classic. I mean, there's very few painters that are even in his category. This came up for auction, and like nobody's bidding on it. I'm like, wait, why? It's a Winslow Homer. Why is no one? I called art experts, and I'm like, what? What's the deal? And blah blah blah. And they said, wait, what? It's what? I told them, and they said, if you don't get it, I will get it. It is called Upland Cotton. And I just want to tell you the story and show you, if we begin to erase things, how much we lose. Winslow Homer in 1875 or 79 goes down south. He is an abolitionist. He, I think, grew up in Massachusetts or Maine, someplace up in the Northeast. He comes down to the South because he wants to paint the story of Reconstruction. And this one in particular, he painted, I think, a couple of paintings. This one in particular is really interesting because it has a lot of different stories attached to it. But if you look at the image, you see this woman, this old black woman who looks like, dressed like Aunt Jemima, if you will. She is bending down and she is still in the fields. Now, this is a painting of what was going on during Reconstruction. You'll notice that her body is, if you're looking at it, she is at the horizon level and she's bent down looking at the ground. Then there's another figure behind her, appears to be a mulatto woman, standing up, and she's standing up erect. She's over the horizon and she's looking out. So what this painting is showing is that Reconstruction isn't working because they're still in doing the same things. The older generation is still there. They don't know what to do. They are just still there. And the youth is looking to the future, but they are still trapped there. How is this a bad idea? How is this? Here's a white man telling the nation what's really going on. This painting at one time hung in the National Gallery of Art. It's insane. It's insane that it's now over my fireplace. It's insane. Let me show the other one. This one is from the illustrators. I love American illustration. This is from about 1919. This is from Edward Brewer. He was a forerunner of Norman Rockwell, et cetera, et cetera. This is an ad, okay? This is when ads had to be oil paintings. This is an ad of the cream of wheat guy sitting in a hotel room or lobby. It's snowing on the outside, and there he is sitting with a group of kids, and the caption underneath just says, Alibaba and the 40 Thieves. Now, the cream of wheat guy being removed, okay? Can't have this black man. Look at him. Look at him. What is he, serving all of these white children? Let me just tell you a little story. The cream of wheat had a figure before this figure who was racist. And he was like, they tell me it has vitamins in it. I don't know. But if vitamins are bugs, well, they don't have any bugs in it. I mean, it's really, but in 1900, they realized how racist that was, and the company jettisoned that. So in 1900, they took a picture of this guy. This is a real guy. His name is Frank White. He was born in Barbados in 1867. By 1879, I think, he and his family moved to the United States. So now here's a black family that realizes that America is free and there's better opportunity in America than there is in Barbados. So they moved to the United States. By 1890, he becomes a citizen. By 1900, he is a world-class famous chef in Chicago. He then opens up his own business. He's an entrepreneur. 1900, they come to him because he's well known. Can we take your picture? Would you like to be the face of Cream of Wheat? He says yes. The guy dies in 1938. Okay. He is always at that time known as the guy from the Cream of Wheat box. Everybody loves him. He is famous. He was successful. He was an entrepreneur. They're now taking his face off. Well, you know what happened in 2007? A white guy, I think, named Jesse Lasorda. He's a family researcher. He stumbles upon the grave of Frank L. Wright and thinks that's the Cream of Wheat guy, right? So he does research on him, finds this little grave with barely a marker on it. He raises the money to put a nice monument, and this is in 2007, a nice grave marking with the Cream of Wheat face on it, yada, yada, yada. This guy in 2007 said, we were about to lose his grave marking. We were about to lose his story. So we preserved it in 2007. And now it's, I guess, now it's just too darn racist to even show and have on a box. We are erasing really good history. We're erasing who we used to be. We cannot find our way to the future if you don't know where you came from. I went around my house yesterday and I realized almost everything that I own is now being deemed racist. Everything that I have collected about American history is deemed racist. Gang, there's nothing left if we allow this to happen. There's nothing left. I don't know if we can fight and win. We have to do our best on that. We have to start standing up and speaking out and not being afraid of the consequences. But we also have to preserve things ourselves. I don't know what interests you in American history. I don't know if it's books. It can be new books. It doesn't have to be old. It doesn't have to be expensive. It just has to tell the story of America, but preserve it. Please keep a journal and preserve what's happening at this time, because all of these things are going to be erased. The story told in the future, if they win, will not be the story that you and I are living right now. You and I are seeing the cities in our country run by Democrats being burnt to the ground. That's not going to be, the history will be, these were peaceful protests, and the United States government came in and started setting the country on fire, and it was out of control. And so these heroes of Antifa stood up against it, and they were the ones to save us from the evils of this republic that had gone awry. That's the story that's going to be told. You must preserve the truth. Newspapers, video, DVDs, whatever it is you can do, please preserve it.
Once again, I'd like to thank everybody for joining me on this segment of Black Spring with Autumn. So I thought that was an interesting piece by Glenn Beck. And for instance, like, I mentioned on the previous segment that, encyclopedias used to be a resource, a home resource. Now, I will say, I think they were expensive. And I would imagine that they probably still are. I don't know. Does anybody out here have a set of encyclopedias? Or, I would even buy an older set if I could find an older set of encyclopedias, especially if you have kids. Oh, shout out to Garrett Reed. Thank you so much for coming in. How are you? Thank you so much for coming in. So, wow. Well, that's a breakdown. That's not acceptable. It's not the thing. See, the thing about it is Garrett Reed. You know, if they want to make Ebonics academic, I wouldn't even support that then, because I'm going to tell you, Ebonics to me is not something. Ebonics was more of a, to me, more of a native kind of a dialect. It's not something that you. It's not something that was something that was taught via word of mouth. Like, it was something that was, if you I don't even consider what they call Ebonics. I don't even know if that's even academic. If it warrants an academic credibility, because it was something that was just, it was more of a thing that was passed down. Or I think of Ebonics more like slang, or what do you want to call, like a Southern dialect, or it's just not, it's, I think it's a lot of assimilation, a lot of broken words, a lot of broken phrases. It's not something, and then to me, even that is it's a subjective thing. It's a very subjective kind of a thing. There's certain places in the country you can go to where people may not understand. They may not understand what people in Louisiana or what they're saying in New Orleans, or they may not understand what somebody is saying in like rural Alabama. They may not understand it, but it is not something that somebody took the time and wrote an actual textbook and say, okay, day one, this is how you teach. This is how you teach that. I don't know what academic standing they would have on that. That's my argument on that. I don't. But I do think that to put this country in a regressive state is more than insulting. It's disgusting. If that's the end game, a lot of people are not going to respect that. But what it's going to do, what I think it's going to end up doing, the effect that it will have, it will make, because you have places already in Black community where you will be attacked for speaking correct English. You will be attacked for that. So what we're going to do now, the framework now, is it to make the English that we speak now even less acceptable? Will the next generation rag the kids of this generation for what they learned and say that, you're not black because you don't speak the way that I speak? It's more of a breakdown. It's another way of destroying and demoralizing the Black community. Education. Why are you doing things in the name of education? I mean, there was a time in history where it wasn't legal for Black people to read. There was a time. So why anything that you do now is an assault? It's a modern day segregation that they are setting up. They're changing the culture within a culture. I really don't know how it's going to go. I think it's going to clash. I think it might backfire on them. But if everybody does their job, if people, resist, it should backfire. But it's dumbing kids down. And for what? For what reason? Shout out to the rapper 10,000. Well, I'm sick of it too. I'm sick of it too. Soft bigotry, low expectations. Yeah, it's absolutely. And I really don't think. I'm beginning to think that they're not winning. They keep doing all these things, and they keep overplaying their hand, and then it backfires on them. For anybody that has gone to college, or whether they've gone to college or whether they've gone to whatever their level of education, they're not going to accept just outright a total breakdown in in the education of their kids. I think they're underestimating Black people, and they are doing their liberal thing. I think it will be rejected by most Black people. I really do. Black families, I think they will reject that. Or either that, you have an opportunity right now to teach your kids at home. I know Black people who speak French and Spanish, and so-called Black leaders demean them for that, for not acting. Yeah, it's pretty gross. It's pretty gross. But there again, there's to me, it's a devalued, a very demoralized, it's a demoralizing state. You got to make somebody feel bad so that you can be okay, right? I'm thinking it kind of comes down to, it comes back to, I think, like, self-worth, self-value, or you work on yourself. You might not look, and stop comparing yourself to the next person. I mean, I just, unique view. And see, that's what unique view. I think there's been a lack of leadership. I think that we don't have a good definition of leadership is what's been going on. I think we've had a lot of con. We had a lot of con and a lot of martyrs, is what I think we've had. But to me, even with leadership, when you're taught well on any subject or art form, eventually that person can leave you, that person can go away and take their hand off of you, or they'll take the training wheels off. And but when they take the training wheels off, you shouldn't crash, right? You're still going to be okay because you had the right instruction, right? If somebody teaches you to ride a bike, you're presuming they're going to teach you how to stop that bike. They're going to teach you how to turn that bike, turn your bike, whether you have a small radius, and probably not with a small radius turn, but the larger radius is probably where you would start. But if you do that tight little turn, you're going to have a higher chance of falling off. But I'm just thinking, if you have the right kind of instruction, even when that leader or that teacher or that master, if you will, takes their hand off, you're not going to crash and burn. And I think that we haven't had enough of the right kinds of leadership. And that's why people, not all, but some, are crashing and burning, because it wasn't on stable footing. I mean, let's see. Now BLM is attacking the wall of moms for anti-Blackness. Those so-called strong Black mothers. Oh gosh. Yeah, they're not going to stop. I'm going to be honest. The rapper. I don't think anything is off limits. I'm not surprised at anything. That this is a revolution. Okay, it's always about the revolution. It's not about speed stick versus ivory deodorant, or Uncle Ben's versus Minute Rice, because one is better than the other. It's about overthrowing the whole idea of America. I think this is an American attack. And we've got plenty of communists in this country, and they have a huge influence. And nobody ever really says that. They'll go to socialism, but they rarely ever talk about. I mean, we've got people that have actually trained in Russia. We've got, Angela Davis even received an award. She's an avowed communist. And she thinks that Biden's a great choice because it's going to be based on who it's going to be based on who can control Biden, who can make Biden do whatever they want them to do. If he says, if they say we want to get rid of this, they want him to, they need a yes man. They don't want resistance. They need the least resistant. They need the least representation. They need the least resistant front, the least resistant front man. And that's who it is for them. You know what, the rapper, I think a lot of things are going to, I don't know. I really just don't, I don't know the unrest, if how much that's going to cool down. It's just, we have a lot of battles. We have a lot of battles. So I really appreciate you guys so much for coming out. And so I guess, just stay in the fight wherever you are. Like I said, my question today was, I do this and I'm like, this is my 1960s. Yeah. I mean, I said that whole culture of the 1960s, you had the movements, you had movements everywhere, and the Midwest was strong. I think the Midwest was the birthplace of a lot of radicals, a lot of underground movements. A lot of communist training happened. Then you had to take the Frankfurt schools, took over the sociology departments. Let's see. So here, let me put this in here before I forget it. But this was by We the People, the historians, before the postmodern USA becomes, before we become the former. It's like we're the former American values. What are we replacing all of these things with? What are we replacing the statues with? What are they replacing? Like, if they were to be successful with defund the police, what are they replacing defund the police with? I mean, because I'm telling you, I do believe when the pendulum swings the other way, it's going to be intense. I do believe they will nationalize police. I think Obama was trying to do that, and they didn't. He didn't finish it. He didn't finish a lot of things, including the UN arms treaty. That was supposed to be finished as well. And, even Biden has even said, get back into the Paris Climate Agreement. So I'm just saying, it's not going to be, it's going to be, like I said, I just think that we're losing so many battles, and some of those things are not coming back. It's not like, like Beck was talking about Aunt Jemima, that was a real person, a successful former slave, and you erase that. So I'm not sure what else is, I don't know what else. Are they going to attack all of the museums? Or, what are they going to do? Shout out to everybody in the stream. Unique View says, why do poor communities have so many liquor stores and weed shops and BLM not talking about these types of problems? Well, there again, there seems to be, self-destruction. I've said this before, that most of the time, I've seen it before, they love to euphemize things that are self-destructive. If you're, intoxicated and doing all these things, that's a destructive, that can be a destructive thing. Where there's poverty and where there's not, whether there's poverty or where there's a lot of crime, of course, it's that's a part of it. But thank you guys so much for coming in. Yeah, BLM is not, that's the revolutionary group. Nothing that they do is going to be about anything. And before it's over, it'll morph into something else. It's going to keep morphing. Whatever's effective is what they morph into. If they think they can cover more ground by adding another group of people, they'll pick up some more. They'll pick up another group of people, another ideology. I said this before. It's an intersectionality that they are going for. They're not really. And they went on, and who was it? Even Don Lemon, when he was with, do I have that clip? I'm already going over time. He talked about, he said, Don Lemon said, hey, if you want somebody to talk about, here, I'll let you see for yourself. I'm not going to play this whole thing. It's just, Lemon is pretty tart. I'm going to do this one, and then I'm going to get us out of here.
Actor and activist Terry Crews.
So I hope you guys are doing well in the stream. Thank you guys so much for joining me. Yep, they're back to their originators. It's time for them to see. That's how you can tell the revolution is running out of steam. Divide the people, claim you got support, you got popular support. And then what they're the part that they're on right now is they've been neutralizing opposition is what they've been doing now. And then from there, I think as closer we get to the election, the violence is going to go up, unfortunately. So I'll give you guys this, and then we'll wrap it up.
Facing backlash for tweeting, we must ensure Black Lives Matter doesn't morph into Black Lives Better. Here's how he explained it. Are all white people bad? No. Are all Black people good? No. Knowing this reality, I stand on my decision to unite with good people, no matter the race, creed, or ideology. Given the number of threats against this decision, I also decide to die on this hill. Terry Crews joins me now. Terry? Man, you stepped in it. You say that you're willing. You say you're willing to die on this hill. You've taken a lot of heat for this. Explain what you were thinking and why it's so important that you die on this hill.
Well, again, I wanted to bring up the fact that there are some very, very militant type forces in Black Lives Matter, and what I was issuing was a warning. It's one of those things where I've been a part of different groups, I've been a part of different things, and you see how extremes can go far and can go wild. And then when you issue a warning, and when a warning is seen as detrimental to the movement, how can you ever have checks and balances? In the 60s and 70s, airplanes went down all the time. And the reason they found out why they did was because the pilots could never be questioned. And when you have the leaders of the Black Lives Movement who are now talking about, if we don't get our demands, we're going to burn it down. Other Black people who are talking about working with other whites and other races, they're being viewed as sellouts or called Uncle Toms. You start to understand that you are now, being controlled. You're not being treated as loved. You're actually being controlled. Someone wants to control the narrative. And I viewed it as a very, very dangerous self-righteousness that was developing that really viewed themselves as better. It was almost a supremacist move.
Let me jump in,
where
Terry.
they viewed that their Black lives mattered a lot more than mine.
Okay, so let me jump in here. There's a lot that you said. You think Black Lives Matter is? You said you think it's an extreme movement because it's now part of the.
No, this is the thing. It's a great mantra. It's a true mantra. Black lives do matter. But when you're talking about an organization, you're talking about the leaders. You're talking about the people who are responsible for putting these things together.
I got you. So let me.
But
Terry, you realize that even during the civil rights movement, that Dr. King was seen as extreme. That movement was seen as extreme. To people who don't want to make change, movements are seen as extreme. You can paint them easily as an extreme when they are not.
This is very true. But also, when you're talking about MLK, you're talking about Nelson Mandela, and even Malcolm X, they all realized that you had to have a non-racial component to these kind of movements, or there will be resentment. There will be get back. There will be, one of these people will tend to, listen, I don't want to move from one oppressor to the next. And one thing is really
who's the next oppressor? Who's the next oppressor?
Oh, when I describe this, when you look in the city of Chicago, there are 9 children who died by gun violence, by black on black gun violence, from June 20th all the way to today. And you're talking about, even with the Atlanta child murders, there were 28 kids who died in 2 years. You're talking about a month, and you have 9 black kids, and the Black Lives Matter movement has said nothing about this.
What does that have to do with
know,
equality, though, Terry? I don't understand what that has to do with equality, because listen, there's crime. There are people in those communities those people aren't just being nonchalant about gun violence. I lived in Chicago. There are many people who are working in those communities to try to get rid of the gun violence. The gun culture in this country is prevalent, but I don't understand what that has to do with a movement that's for equality for Black people. It's not mutually exclusive that if you care about equality for Black people, that somehow you're going to stop random violence, or unfortunately kids from being shot. It just seems like apples and oranges.
It's not that way. This is the thing, Don. Black people need to hold other Black people accountable. I said this the same thing. This is the Black America's version of the Me Too movement. If anything is going to change, we ourselves need to look at our own communities and look at each other and say, this thing cannot go down. And this is the thing too. There are a lot of great people there who are held hostage, by people who literally are running these neighborhoods with violence and then claiming that Black Lives Matter. When you look at the parents of these little kids who are saying, hey man, why aren't they speaking up for me too? And then this is what I'm saying. When I look at this whole thing about, it's about who is controlling the narrative. It's got to be all Black Lives Matter. And what's happened is that because I even challenged it, because I even questioned and warned people,
Terry,
I became sick. Like if I told you to wear a mask,
but Terry,
they want to kick you out.
You're a high-profile person. You're writing things out there. You know you're going to get backlash. You know people are going to respond to what you're saying on Twitter. So I don't think you should be surprised by that. I have a skin as tough as an armadillo because of what I do, and I think maybe you should adapt that. But here's what I have to say. The Black Lives Matter movement was started because it was talking about police brutality. If you want an all Black Lives Matter movement that talks about gun violence in communities, including, Black communities, then start that movement with that name. But that's not what Black Lives Matter is about. It's not an all-encompassing. So if you're talking about, if someone started a movement that said, cancer matters, and then someone comes in and said, why aren't you talking about HIV? It's not the same thing. We're talking about cancer. So the Black Lives Matter movement is about police brutality and injustice in that manner, not about what's happening in Black neighborhoods. There are people who are working on that issue, and if you want to start that issue,
start that issue. Don Lemon is a walking contradiction. I mean, don't call it Black Lives Matter. And it's just, I think that they're running low on their supply for Black people's participation, and Black people's co-signing of this movement is also dying on the vine, and they're being exposed. So, and then to me, it was never about Black Lives Matter. That's not what it's about. It's about the communist revolution. Take over. And guys, I do apologize, but I'm going to have to wrap this one up. I thank you guys so much for joining me on this segment of Black Spring with Autumn. Have a great day, guys.